Welcome to Dialogue. Today, we're doing a deep dive into something that happens every single day, but often goes completely unnoticed.
hmm
We're talking about that specific moment a scientific finding leaves the lab. When it moves from that cautious, very rigorous world into the wild.
Into the public landscape, yeah.
Exactly. And suddenly it's in this whole other ecosystem, one that's driven by attention, by clicks, by narrative.
It's a complete phase shift, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's not just a translation from technical language to simple language.
No.
The rules completely change.
Yeah.
The things that are valued in lab precision, nuance, acknowledging limitations, those become liabilities out in the open.
And the new rules are governed by, well, by the attention economy.
Right, and by the demand for a really compelling story. That's the key.
So our mission today is to track that entire information pipeline. We want to take you step by step from, the peer-reviewed paper all the way to that single super shareable graphic that you see on your social media feed.
Because that's where the meaning can get twisted. It shifts, it gets distorted, and sometimes, and this is the scary part, it can get completely reversed by the time it reaches an audience of millions.
We're trying to understand how cautious facts become these huge, dramatic stories.
And that's really the core conflict for anyone who's trying to stay informed. You have to realize that the science you consume is never raw data. It's always mediated.
It's been packaged.
It's been packaged, it's been framed, it's been interpreted to maximize engagement. So the real question for you to ask isn't just, what does the science say?
It's how is this being packaged for me?
Exactly. And crucially, what were the incentives that drove that packaging process?
Okay, let's get into that transformation then, because it can be honestly pretty startling just how fast and how severe that changes.
It's almost instant.
The moment a piece of research leaves that academic bubble, the forces governing it just flip. You go from the logic of, let's say, academic rigor.
Which values caution, replicate.
Right. And you jump straight to the logic of the algorithm, which values speed and, above all, novelty.
And that's the new landscape.
Yeah.
Science now has to compete. It's competing for your clicks, for your emotional reaction, for shares, right alongside a political scandal or the latest movie trailer.
And what are the consequences of that competition?
That's what really matters. The biggest consequence is that complexity gets crushed. It's flattened into a simple, digestible narrative.
And uncertainty.
Uncertainty vanishes. Uncertainty is the backbone of good science. The confidence intervals, the p-values, all the stuff that says we're not totally sure, that gets instantly transformed into a declaration of absolute confidence, a definitive statement.
You see this all the time, a study that took years, and it's just suggesting a pretty weak correlation.
Becomes a world-changing breakthrough in the headline.
A tentative possibility is suddenly an ironclad truth.
And we can't just point the finger at the media for this. The hype machine often starts much earlier.
You mean inside the academic system itself?
Absolutely. Think about the publish-or-perish culture. Researchers are under enormous pressure to get into these high-impact journals.
And those journals want papers that are going to get attention, get citations?
Precisely. So that pressure means that even the researcher's own press release, written by their university's PR department, might already be subtly overstating the results just to make sure it gets noticed.
So the spin starts at the source.
The spin often starts at the source. The public then gets a picture that's fundamentally different from what scientists actually know in the lab, with all the caveats and all the limitations.
So you're not learning what the scientists know.
You're learning what you are told to know. And what you're told is shaped by the needs of the platforms that's delivering it.
Which brings us to this idea of stripping away the context. That seems to be the main mechanism here.
It is the core mechanism. If you've ever tried to read an academic journal, the language is dense, it's cautious, it's technical for a reason.
It's full of phrases like, "we suggest a possible link," or "pending further investigation."
Right. And that cautious language is the very first thing to go. It gets stripped out and replaced with simplified, often hyperbolic claims, and these bold, flashy graphics that might be really misleading.
And the biggest casualty in all of this has to be nuance.
Always.
The technical details are just gone. The sample size, who funded the study, the difference between a study on mice and a human trial.
And most importantly, the limitations that scientists themselves openly acknowledge. A scientist is professionally required to talk about limitations.
Well, the media, driven by this attention economy, is rewarded for speaking in absolutes. It's a direct conflict.
Nutrition science is a perfect example. It's just a constant source of public confusion because of this exact process.
Oh, yeah.
A paper might find that a specific compound, say resveratrol in red wine, has an effect on cells aging in a petri dish,
In a lab.
in a lab. But when that hits the media pipeline, the context disappears.
Yeah.
The fact that you'd need to drink, I don't know, 100 bottles of wine a day to get a similar dose in your body is lost.
And the headline just becomes,
Red wine ingredient fights aging. And the public filter interprets that as a health recommendation, not a tiny tentative lab observation.
this creates what you call the public filter problem, because almost everyone encounters science through these second or third-hand channels.
Nobody's reading the methods section of the original paper.
No, their entire understanding is shaped by this filtered, pre-packaged reality.
And that translation is not neutral. It is actively shaped for emotional engagement, for virality, for that what do I do now factor.
So the whole battleground for truth, for something as important as climate change or vaccine effectiveness, it's not really being fought in the labs anymore.
It's being fought, and very often lost, in the narratives that dominate our screens. When you turn science into a spectacle, the information loses its grounding. It just becomes another ideology.
So if the process is set up to destroy nuance, we really need to look at the specific steps. Where are the points of no return?
Yes, where does that scientific caution just get boiled away?
To really get it, we have to map out that pipeline. It's not one single leap. It's a step-by-step process where at each stage, more and more nuance just evaporates.
It's like a flash fire. And understanding this flow is key because it shows you who has the power to package and distort the message at each point. The process is surprisingly consistent across different fields.
So let's break it down. Stage one, obviously, is the researchers.
Right. They produce the paper. It's full of data, methodology, and those really important sections on caveats and limitations. They're working, or should be, within an academic incentive structure.
Then stage two is the PR departments.
And this is the first critical point of packaging. These are often people whose job is media placement, not necessarily scientific accuracy.
They're the ones writing the press release.
They're writing the press release that they hope journalists will just copy and paste. They're crafting the headline that will probably define the entire public story. They are the hype machine.
Okay, then stage three, the journalists.
The gatekeepers. They decide which of those dozens of press releases is newsworthy, which one fits a story they're already telling.
And they're working under their own pressures. Click rates, deadlines, pleasing an editor.
Constantly. They're trying to balance that hyped-up press release against what their newsroom needs, which is almost always immediate audience engagement.
Which leads to stage four, social media.
The great amplifier. This stage is maybe the most transformative of all. The story, which has already been simplified, gets thrown into a system designed purely to maximize engagement.
Likes, comments, shares.
Regardless of whether it's true or not. And engagement almost always favors the most extreme, the most emotional interpretation.
And the final stage, stage five, is public opinion.
The end product. It's a widely accepted, usually oversimplified conclusion that can be, and often is, wildly different from the original cautious finding.
So you think of scientific integrity as a signal.
This pipeline is just a series of powerful noise generators that completely overwhelm it.
And that brings us to the core problem. The incentives that are driving all this distortion. Why does it always seem to lead to sensationalism?
Because the media structures, both financially and algorithmically, reward very specific types of content. And those types of content are often in direct conflict with the reality of how science actually works.
This is where it gets really clear. We can actually map out the commodities that trade highest in this attention economy. There are 5 specific characteristics that the system just consistently rewards.
And that PR teams know they have to hit if they want their study to get any coverage at all.
First up is outrage.
Nothing drives clicks like anger, or fear, or moral indignation. If you can frame a finding to attack a group or challenge a deeply held belief, you are guaranteed virality.
You see this in diet debates all the time. Science is used as a weapon to prove one side's moral superiority.
Exactly. It's not about informing. It's about validating outrage.
Okay, number 2, surprise.
The counterintuitive finding. The everything you thought you knew was wrong headline.
New study shows sleep is actually bad for you, or something like that.
Right. It gets massive, immediate traction. It doesn't matter if the study is tiny, preliminary, or methodologically flawed. The media rewards the disruption of what we thought we knew.
Number 3, simplicity.
Complexity is a cost. It takes effort from the reader and time from the journalist. Simple, bite-sized takeaways.
The do this, avoid that advice.
Perfect for the digital format. It fits into an infographic, a tweet, a short video. Anything that requires a real explanation of the methods just gets filtered out.
And number 4, and this feels like the biggest one, is certainty.
This is the fundamental conflict that corrupts the entire process. Science almost never deals in absolutes. It offers probabilities.
But the news cycle demands certainty. The headline structure demands it.
An accurate headline would be something like, observational study suggests a possible weak link between X and a 3% change in Y, pending replication and controlling for 5 other factors.
Nobody clicks on that.
Nobody clicks?
Yeah.
Nobody shares. It's too weak.
Yeah.
But if you change it to X cures, Y doctor stunned, it breaks the internet. That demand for certainty is the engine of distortion.
It's amazing. In that one transformation, the most important parts of the science, the probability and the caution, are the first things to go.
Their liabilities.
Mm.
And the 5th and final characteristic is controversy.
Ah.
If you can tie a finding to a pre-existing culture war or a political fight, the engagement numbers just explode.
Because the algorithms love polarization.
They thrive on it. A finding that's politically neutral and just sort of advances knowledge a little bit. It doesn't compete. Controversy is engagement, and engagement is revenue.
So if you look at that matrix of 5 things, the pressure is just immense. The only interpretations that will make it through the pipeline are the ones that maximize one of those 5 values.
Which means the quiet, careful, nuanced science, which is probably 90% of all research, the stuff that moves the needle forward by 1%, it just gets left behind. It's filtered out.
Which leads to the critical question. If the system is designed to reward distortion, how are we, the audience, supposed to handle this? Can we even recognize what's missing?
I think that's the crisis of interpretation we're facing.
Right, and that brings us directly to what you'd call a scientific literacy crisis. But it's not about knowing facts, like the boiling point of water.
No, it's not about trivia. It's about the public's inability to distinguish between really fundamental scientific concepts. And that confusion makes us all vulnerable to these distorted narratives.
And the language is often intentionally blurred in the reporting, right? Because if the audience really understood the distinction, the headline wouldn't work anymore.
Absolutely. So let's go through a few. These are the essential tools you need to engage critically.
Okay, let's start with the absolute classic, correlation versus causation.
We all learn the phrase, but the misuse is subtle. Correlation just means 2 things are happening at the same time. The real danger is failing to spot the confounder.
That hidden third variable.
Exactly. The hidden variable that's actually driving both things. The headline might say, people who take supplement Z have less heart disease. That's a correlation. But the people who choose to take supplements are probably also wealthier, more educated, more likely to exercise.
All things that lead to better health.
Right. It's not the supplement causing it, it's their lifestyle.
Right.
But the media reports correlation as causation, because causation is a much stronger, simpler story.
Okay, next one. Hypothesis versus conclusion.
A hypothesis is just an educated guess. It's a starting point for an investigation. A conclusion is what you find after all the rigorous testing is done.
But so many of these news studies in the news are really just the first test of a hypothesis.
They're testing it in a few mice or in a test tube, but they get reported as if they're ironclad, proving conclusions for humans. When you present a hypothesis as a conclusion, you're guaranteeing it will be overhyped.
Which leads to another one, the difference between preliminary versus validated findings.
Preliminary findings are exciting. They hit that surprise button we talked about, but they're unstable. They need to be replicated by other independent teams.
With bigger sample sizes, different methods.
Exactly. A validated finding has survived that whole process of scrutiny. The problem is, by the time a finding is actually validated, which can take years, the media has already moved on to the next shiny new preliminary result.
And that's what creates that whiplash effect for the audience. First they say this, then they say that.
That confusion is a direct result of the media prioritizing novelty over robustness.
Okay, here's one that gets used almost like a weapon to shut down debate. Peer review versus truth.
This is such a critical one. Peer review is a quality control step. It's vital, but it's human. It just means a couple of other experts in the field thought your methodology was sound at that moment in time.
It is not a guarantee of absolute truth.
Not at all. Peer-reviewed papers get retracted all the time for errors, for fraud. But in the media, the phrase peer-reviewed is used to grant this instant, unchallengeable authority. Like it's the final word.
When it's really just the starting gun for the actual scientific debate.
Precisely. And that misuse stops people from thinking critically about it.
And finally, a really subtle one, consensus versus authority.
Consensus is a broad agreement among the vast majority of relevant experts, built up over decades based on mountains of evidence. It's hard won.
Authority, on the other hand.
Authority can be based on a single person or a single institution. It relies on credentials or charisma. Media often loves to find one charismatic expert who might have great credentials but is an outlier and present their single opinion as being equal to the decades-long scientific consensus.
The charisma trap.
It's a huge part of the charisma trap, and it gives the public a totally false sense of the state of the evidence.
Just think for a moment about how many times you have seen those 5 distinctions completely blurred in a viral post or a news segment. When you lose those basic tools interpretation, you're just left with the emotional power of the headline.
And this problem is then magnified exponentially by today's digital platforms. We're now in the world of echo chambers and algorithmic science.
Right. The pipeline we just mapped out isn't just passively transmitting this stuff anymore.
No, the algorithms are actively optimizing for the distortion.
That's the key difference. Platforms like YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, they aren't neutral pipes for information. They are architects of our reality. They reinforce our biases.
Their prime directive is engagement, time on site. And engagement is driven overwhelmingly by confirming what you already believe.
Confirmation bias on steroids.
It's the core engine. The algorithm sees what you liked, what you angrily commented on, and it just feeds you more of the same. It creates this closed loop where distorted science that fits a worldview, any worldview, gains incredible traction.
And that leads to the rapid spread of this stuff because the algorithm can't tell the difference between accurate information and engaging misinformation.
It treats them identically. If the false claim gets more clicks and keeps you scrolling longer, the algorithm will actually prioritize it over the boring, nuanced truth. The algorithm is the ultimate ruthless editor, and it's editing for attention, not accuracy.
And on top of the algorithm, you have the social incentives on these platforms, which creates what you called the charisma trap.
This is a devastating effect. The entire system shifts the rewards away from credentialed expertise, which is often boring and full of caveats, and toward charismatic performance.
Absolutely. You think about who goes viral talking about health or tech. It's never the tenured professor speaking in probabilities.
No.
It's the dynamic, confident speaker who presents a simple, certain view with great visual flair and high production values.
Entertainment values elevated above vetted knowledge. The algorithm rewards the performance, and the audience, which is desperate for certainty, gives authority to the best performer, not necessarily the most knowledgeable expert.
And this creates a really perverse feedback loop.
It does. The genuine expert is trained to say, here's where the data is weak. The charismatic performer, who isn't constrained by the data, can speak in the absolutes that the audience wants and the algorithm loves.
So the cautious scientist gets filtered out.
And the confident sensationalist gets amplified. The result is that by the time the science reaches you, it has been filtered by institutional PR, reshaped by financial incentives, and ruthlessly edited by an algorithm that prefers performance over truth.
It's the full journey from complex reality to a very profitable spectacle.
And then we wonder why trust in institutions is falling. People are only being shown the most extreme, most conflict-driven, most distorted version of science.
We have to be so vigilant. What we're consuming is not raw science. It's a hyper-optimized narrative designed to capture our attention and confirm our biases.
The battle for meaning is often lost before the paper even leaves the university's press office.
This has been a really, I think, profoundly insightful breakdown of this whole pipeline. It shows so clearly how the meaning of scientific evidence can just shift or distort or even completely reverse on its way to us.
The battle for truth really is fought in the narratives that are dominating our screens. There's no escaping that.
We've focused a lot today on how that distortion happens almost organically through simplification and algorithms and the chase for certainty.
Right, as a consequence of the system.
But to connect this to the bigger picture, we want to leave you with one final provocative thought to consider.
Sometimes the distortion you see at the end of the pipeline isn't just an accident. It's not just a misunderstanding by a journalist or a consequence of the attention economy. Meaning, sometimes the science that enters the pipeline in the first place was deliberately engineered, structured, or packaged from the very beginning to serve an interest other than the impartial pursuit of truth.
So the game was rigged from the start.
That's the critical idea for you to hold on to. The next time you see a headline that seems just a little too clean, a little too simple, or a little too perfectly aligned with a specific political or financial agenda, ask yourself that question.
If you enjoyed this conversation, please like, subscribe, and share this video. Also, let us know in the comments what really stood out to you in this conversation and if there's any related topic or new topic that you would like covered in a future video.